Welcome into PrepAquatics.com. I am Skylar King. As always, you can email me, Skylar at PrepAquatics.com. You can follow me on Twitter at SkylarPrep. Welcome back after a year hiatus where we had some virtual swim meets, but not the big one, obviously. And it was just a very strange year. No spectators allowed. I did get called in at the last minute to call the state water polo tournament. Because they did hold state events for spring sports. They got canceled in the spring of 2020. And so that was really the only event that I got to attend, and there was no spectators there. And so hopefully this is a year that we take a step back to normalcy. And also some big changes, which we'll discuss at the end of this one. So, the reason I didn't put out my usual amount of preview material and predictions and all this stuff is because, honestly, I think we all have to realize, while a lot of you may know the younger girls on your individual teams, it's just hard to know. All the freshmen obviously are always a wild card, but in this case it's also the sophomores that we didn't get to see on the big stage last year as freshmen that normally we know about coming into the season when we're trying to make our best educated guesses on how things are going to play out. And so it's really going to be kind of back to my roots in my first year of doing this a decade or so ago. And as I try to piece together everything for basically half the rosters, obviously I'm familiar with the juniors and seniors from 2 state meets ago than that season, but there's just more unknown than ever before coming into this one. So, and the other frustrating thing about girls season every year is that there are a lot more college visits than there ever are. I don't recall ever having a boy miss a meet during the winter season because of a college visit. So you are dealing with that too until it seems like generally like mid to late October, when you can guarantee that everyone's going to be at a meet for a team. But I did want to highlight a couple good early season meets and some of the teams from these meets that look like they'll probably be top 10, if not trophy contenders later this season. And so this is in chronological order. I'll end with the Invitational at Hinsdale Central because that's the meet I actually attended from this past week. Rosary Oswego. This is a meet that I had gone to quite often over the years because of my work schedule now. It's harder and harder for me to go to meets other than Fridays and Saturdays. Rosary 147.2, Oswego East 149.6. Oswego, obviously they've lost a lot of talent over the years. That between Georgia White and who came out in defense of Daryl Lubner in the paper. Unfortunate situation going on with the Oswego program, and Molly Lubner not in the mix right now for this team. But they look strong. Both their free relays at 138 and 336 are good times for this point in the season. Laura Wiley 154 in the 200 and 53.2 in the 100. We know she's a breaststroker. Those are nice times for her at this point in the season. They look like a team that, despite everything they've lost, is a top 10 contender again. And they also had Katie Gressick go 58 in the fly for them. They had Corinne Geis go 512 in the 500. And the 500 in this world now, it could be wide open. Obviously, we've had out of Neuqua Valley just a dominant force in recent years, and now things should kind of normalize. And we'll see if we don't have just a giant pack all competing for the state title this year. And then also for Oswego, I thought was noteworthy. Diner for them in the breaststroke. 108.6 was a nice time, obviously contributing to that medley. For Rosary, Sarah Jass, 210 in the IM. We also know she's a breaststroker as well. She was also runner-up to Wiley in the 100, 53.9. They had Becky Rentz, who, it's always easier for me when there's siblings or cousins that are running around. Obviously, Katie Rentz, great swimmer for Rosary. 24.5 in the 50, 56.5 in the fly for Becky Rentz. Puts her squarely in the conversation for state championship contention in the butterfly this year, you would think. And then, again, one of these new names that I'm just now learning about, Elizabeth Narok, 106 in the breaststroke for Rosary, puts her firmly into top 6 contender status for the beads. And so, based on these results, Rosary might not have a 200 free relay. That's a scoring contender at the state meet. The 200 relay is one of those things where you either have drop dead sprinters or you don't, that can put together a 100 freestyle easier than they can put together a 50 freestyle for that 400 relay. And obviously at 337, they did that. They didn't break 140 in the 200 relay by contrast. And so obviously a lot of that's also dictated by the individual events that your kids swim. And so, they'll have a decision to make with Joss if she's going to swim the breaststroke. Obviously, she's going to have to come out still and swim that 400 relay. And so, maybe they think she can go the 50 and the 100 this year. It'll make it a lot easier for her to contribute on that 400 relay. The other kind of standout dual meet that we had from this past week was Naperville North, St. Charles North. And the times to highlight here: Naperville North 148 in the medley, 148.7, 149.6 for St. Charles North. And for Naperville North, it's the depth is clearly there. They also their weakest relay is definitely the 200. They failed to break 140, but 336.4 in the 400 relay. And so there you kind of see it again, where if you don't have the 50 swimmers, it's hard to put together that short relay. But 148 and 336 are really nice times for them at this point in the season. Also, for Naperville North, Amanda NG 210.6 in the IM. Amy Duhamel 58.3 in the fly. Claire Jansen 58.1 in the back. And so, those are all girls that you could potentially see scoring for Naperville North. Whether or not they can sneak into the top is going to be the big question for them, as to whether they can maybe make a run more towards the top 5, or if they're going to be battling for that 8 through 10 type spot. For St. Charles North, a lot more potential individual firepower here. Angelina Messina, 209 in the IM, also 107 in the breaststroke. Izzy Boo, 107.5 in the breaststroke. She's a freshman. I also saw her win the IM at the Hinsdale Central Invitational that I'll be discussing here in just a moment. And so both of those girls could potentially be contending for top 6 in both the IM and the breaststroke. Jillian Wilson, 58.8 in the fly. Julia Pfeiffer, 24.8 in the 50. And again, they were 149, 139, 338 in the relays. And, they've got Armstrong out there in the distance freeze. She's just not dialing it up at the same level that these girls are right now. Obviously, for a lot of distance swimmers, that takes more time to kind of work into your groove, and you expect bigger drops there. But Armstrong, you expect to potentially, again, be in that top 6 mix in the 500, and you would expect to be at least in the bottom 6 mix in the 200. And so St. Charles North has a lot of potential girls that could piece together a good amount of points for them. And I think you have to look at them as a potential trophy contender. Obviously, they've got a lot of good recent success at the state meet, and they've got a good mix of girls that have been there, along with younger girls like Izzy Boo, who is gonna be an immediate factor for them. The meet I went to was the Kendall Pickering Invitational, obviously in honor of the late Kendall Pickering, who swam for Hinsdale her first 2 years and died in a very unfortunate car crash with her father following this past season. But this was a very strong field for the meet held in her honor, and they did some nice tributes to her, including giving plaques to all the top 6 finishers in the breaststroke, which was her signature event. Medley relay, the home team for the first time in their brand new pool did it in style, 146.9. This is going to be a relay that Hinsdale is going to be top 6 in. There's not a lot else guaranteed when it comes to their relays, but this medley is going to be one that you have to contend with. New Trier 149.1. Here's the thing about New Trier. A lot for them is going to be about where they put Novaline. If she's on the medley, they're going to be a contender to win the medley. If they don't put her on the medley, there's a good chance they could get top 6 anyway, because they have the best breaststroker in the state. Kaylin Ridley, she, along with the fact that she scored in the 50 2 years ago, she was the state champion in the breaststroke, and I'm going to say she is going to be our first girl under a minute at the state meet this year. And so when you have someone that's that elite at one of those 4 strokes, especially one of the odd strokes, you can probably get away with taking Novaline off the medley relay. I just don't think they can win it without Novaline. But again, they don't need to win the medley to win the state meet, which that's what this team should be thinking about. They're that talented. Novaline swam the 200 free. I don't know how hard she tried. She really never had to put it in gear at all. She was never really threatened. 154.1, and it was just smooth, and the whole way just never was threatened, and so never felt the need to kick it into gear. I don't know if she'll swim this at the end of the year, but if she swims any freestyle event, maybe even including the 500, but definitely the 50, 100, and the 200, I think you have to consider her the favorite at the state meet, if not it also included the backstroke. But I think we saw as the meet went on, even though she was elite 2 years ago, I think is just even a totally different swimmer from then. When I saw her this past Saturday. In the IM, Izzy Bowe touched out Caroline Kramer, 2:11.31 to 2:11.38. Again, we didn't get to see her swimming against Naperville North. Maybe she'd have been a little bit faster in that one. This is obviously her first major high school meet as a freshman, and that can be kind of intimidating, but I like how she swam the race. She ran Kramer down on the last 50. I think she's got what it takes to definitely contribute at the state level, as I mentioned before. Kit Schneider, 24.1, wins the 50. She is, probably the most important swimmer for Hinsdale Central this year, just because of the level she can sprint at, and that's something that they desperately need. And so it might be a kind of a downgraded version of the Novaline situation, where Schneider probably has to go 3 relays for Hinsdale Central, because they just need her sprint free so desperately. And so while she may not do it much during the season, because generally it's better to put your best kids in 2 individual races, whether it be invitationals or dual meets, she's someone who I could definitely see going 3 relays for Hinsdale Central. In the fly, Angelina Messina, 58.5, wins it. Leslie Wendell, 58.54, is second. Again, Messina, the 209 in the IM against Deerfield North, she can do a little bit of everything, even though her best race is the breaststroke. And again, this is when we saw Novaline take over, starting with 100 free, 51.7, just blew everyone else out. And this is one of the wild cards here, excuse me, as to why New Trier is probably the favorite to win state this year. Charlize Escasa, never been seriously in the mix for New Trier at the state level before, 53.7 in the 100 free. So you knew coming into the season you were going to have Novaline, you had the Wendell sisters, you had Gridley. Who else was going to step up? Escasa's already doing it. She had a big swim in the breaststroke we'll talk about later, but New Trier, to have a 53 freestyler to complement Novaline, who's the best freestyler in the state, along with the Wendells. Obviously Escasa is someone that is probably going to end up on all three relays with this swim. And so, not that New Trier needed a lot of help, but they got it. They're usually one of the deeper teams, and this is when your depth pays off, when it progresses and becomes a big-time contributor like this. Sadie Murphy for Oak Park, 5:10.9, touching out Burlington Bocos, 5:11.22 for Hinsdale Central in the 500. Both times that you would think give them a good chance to score at the state meet this year, as we were talking earlier about the 500 and how wide open it is. 200 relay, I mentioned that this is really where Novaline started picking things up. New Trier, the only team to break 40, 136.7. And this was Escasa, 24.3 relay split, Gridley, 23.8 relay split, Novaline, 22.9 relay split. Leslie Wendell led off at 25.6. And so, again, 25.6 isn't, is a time that a lot of people have on B relays. And because they have those other three girls, they're still going a time that, Jesus Christ. They're still going a time that would score at the state meet right now without any improvement. And so that's what it is to have the best swimmer in the state on your team. And that's what Novaline is at this point with the way she can sprint freestyle. There's nothing more important in high school swimming than sprint freestyle. The backstroke, which again, Novaline was not in, Kit Schneider, 57.7. I think that this is probably Schneider's best race, but if she is going to be on three relays, it probably makes more sense for her to swim the 50 or the 100, just because of the way things line up with the relays. And so that could be one of the more interesting decisions that we see. She dominated that race on Saturday. That could be one of the more interesting decisions we see from any of the teams that are in contention for the top 10. The breaststroke, I've mentioned both of these girls before. Gridley, 103.5, easy win. Escasa, 105.6. So, New Trier could have two top six breaststrokers. Kramer, 106.8. Messina, 107.8. Rosie Jania for New Trier, 108.3. And so, there's New Trier's number 3 breaststroker going 108. And so, I don't know. 105 in the breast is better than the sprint free times for Escasa in terms of potential individual scoring. And so, I don't know that they're going to be able to use Rosie Jania individually in the breaststroke come sectional time. But, what a luxury to have 3 girls who could all potentially score in one race. And, obviously, Gridley's the standout in that race statewide. Novaline stepped up again in a big way on the 400 relay. They were 1.7 seconds behind when she dove in, and when she popped up after her underwater, they were in first. I think they were in 4th place when she dove in. 50.03 on the end of New Trier's relay, 3:34.9. Again, they were behind by 1.7. They ended up winning by 2.7 seconds. St. Charles North 3:37.6, Hinsdale 3:38.1, Naperville Central 3:38.8. This is by far the best relay at this meet, depth-wise. And so, again, the illustration on those free relays, if Novaline swims it, I think New Trier is winning it come state meet time. And so, whatever relays those are, if there's teams out there that only can go for 2 relays, that's going to be one of the state's, coaches' best, favorite pastimes this year is figuring out where Novaline's not swimming and making sure that that's one of the relays they load so they can try to win that one. But New Trier, as you would expect, won this meet. I think you have to install New Trier because of not just the depth, but more importantly, the top end talent. You have to install them as the early favorite to win state this year. And because we are always looking toward state, I do want to talk for a few minutes about the state meet for the first time in a long time. Is going to be hosted somewhere other than New Trier or Evanston. And it's going to be at this new FMC pool in Westmont that the Kaufman family that runs Athletico built. I have not been there yet, but it is a Olympic-sized pool. And in the minutes on the IHSA board meeting, it says it'll be about a 1,400 person capacity. That's in line with what we've had with New Trier and Evanston. But, it's definitely the end of an era. Although they say that it's only for 3 years, as opposed to, a long-term kind of in perpetuity thing. State tickets are also getting bumped up from $10 a session to $15 a session. And so that makes you wonder how big the pool rental fee is. I haven't been able to find anything on that. I'm interested to know because while I don't know this for a fact, I kind of assume just out of obviously it was a convenience for their kids to not have to travel, even if it was an inconvenience for them at times to host it. I don't think New Trier and Evanston were charging a pool rental fee to the IHSA. While they might have collected the concessions money and things like that, this is money coming out of pocket from, the IHSA, Hinsdale Central and Hinsdale South are co-hosting. So I don't know if they're putting money towards the rental fee of the pool, because, this is what this pool was made for. It was to host big-time championship meets. So many championship meets outside of the high school state meet over the years, whether it be age group state or senior champs. We've gone to Wisconsin, Indiana, and so we have to travel. Everyone has to travel out of state for meets that should be hosted by our state. And so that should change. And they already hosted a couple club meets, club championship meets, in spring and summer this past session. I heard something in the neighborhood of $50,000 was the pool rental for those meets, but those are multi-day meets, sometimes almost a week long, with a lot more entries. And so you can get to that dollar figure a lot easier at a club meet like that. I would think even if it was something half of that, that'd be kind of steep for the IHSA. And so it'd be interesting to know how that all got put together financially. But it will be interesting also to see how this impacts the swimmers. It will undoubtedly be a faster pool in terms of the depth of the pool. Obviously, for the first time, we'll have a full-blown cool-down pool. as opposed to nothing at New Trier or just a small, behind the blocks warm down pool at Evanston. So all the accommodations for the swimmers are going to be better. Time will tell if it can come close to matching the atmosphere at the other two pools, especially Evanston, where the stands are just right on top of you if you're down on the deck. And there's, and I've had kids tell me that it's just the adrenaline of that atmosphere, gets your heart pumping a little bit. And so we might be in a situation where, the pool better be worth all that psych up in terms of how loud it may or may not be in there, because it's going to be a much larger space, a lot more spread out, and it may not seem that loud, even if there's the exact same number of people in there. So that's going to wrap it up for our first show. There's really no big invitationals going on this weekend, which is unfortunate. Obviously, Labor Day always kind of throws a wrench into things, but we'll get back at it next week and recap any mid-week meets that have taken place before we push towards later in September, where we do start getting some bigger invitationals, such as Rosary, which, I will definitely be at that one to see Naperville North and Rosary in person for the first time. And we'll just keep kind of building the portfolio of knowledge that we have on the state's top teams as the season moves on. And we'll see if anyone can emerge as a clear challenger to New Trier and this great senior class that they have. As always, you can email me, skylerprepaquatics.com. You can follow me on Twitter @SkylerPrep, and we'll be back next time recapping more top teams and times at prepaquatics.com.